Do you want to have the best physical party build at endgame? You are in the right place. The One Samurai build is one of my personal physical builds that can completely wreck endgame challenges such as the final boss or even endgame trials easily, given that they don't repel physical attacks. You can see the power of this build even without any royal archetype present in the lineup. The One Samurai party build heavily relies on pure hard-hitting physical attacks while giving the player versatility in combat. A lineup that can deal slash, strike, pierce damage types while also taking advantage of light, wind, and lightning and darkness elemental damage. This party consists of one samurai archetype, a destroyer, a paladin, and even a ninja, a lineup ready for almost anything while keeping the style. The protagonist will be the main damage dealer in this lineup, wielding the samurai archetype, one of my favorite archetypes in the game for obvious reasons. Equipping this archetype will grant the wielder Barge Pass, which prevents battles with enemy advantages, while Giant Slash is going to be your basic single medium physical damage dealing attack when dealing with trash mobs. I use Thunderblade to deal with AoE attacks, especially when facing targets weak to lightning. Concentrate can give you 3 stacks of attack buff, a pretty useful skill especially if our main buffer in the party can buff you at a certain time. Unwavering Blade buffs the wielder with 3 stacks of hit and evasion just in case you need it, but I don't use this that much. The Samurai's passives are nice to have, like Regenerate 3, which regenerates a good amount of HP every turn and helps you mitigate the damage in the long run. But the Sturdy Stance is an interesting passive if you don't care about dodging attacks. It mitigates incoming damage by half, perfect for strength focused protagonist builds since this guy has low agility anyways. Of course, Slash Boost is a no-brainer skill for this build, while Critical Trade will take the second slot to double our chances of dealing critical hits on targets. Arcane Unity passive is also suggested since we will be doing a lot of synthesis attacks with the samurai, and it is going to be our main damage source in this setup. For the last slot, Revitalize 3 is suggested so we can regenerate MP every turn. Our synthesis attacks will cost a lot of MP, and this passive will help you mitigate the MP loss in long fights. As mentioned, your bread and butter move in this setup is the samurai synthesis attacks. When dealing with multiple bosses or elite enemies, Crimson Moon Sword Art will do wonders, dealing severe damage to multiple targets while giving you the chance to inflict charm. If this skill crits, you will be melting multiple bosses, while Windblade will give you the ability to deal with AoE wind elemental damage just in case you need it. But the Peerless Stone Cleaver is going to be the strongest attack that your party can deal with. If this attack deals a critical hit, you will be seeing a huge tons of damage, like 39k damage to targets, enough to one-shot targets, even bosses. The Samurai archetype only requires the wielder 2 turn icons to pull off this attack, which is why it is busted. Even this skill doesn't crit, it will still deal tons of damage, enough to burst down targets in an instant. Truly a fantastic skill, and you can see my damage demos on the screen right now. You don't need the best equipment or legendary items to make this build work. It's just that when I recorded this video, I already had the endgame equipment, which you will eventually have. Equip the best equipment that you have or can buy from the shops, and you are going to be fine. However, I will require to equip the Gambler's Manual for the accessory slot to double your critical hit damage. This is one of the reasons why the Peerless Stone Cleaver deals an eye-whopping damage because of this accessory, and you can get this item by winning in ranked Coliseum matches in Brilhaven. Just in case you want to know my endgame or late game setup, I am flashing each piece of equipment that I slotted in on the screen right now. One requirement though is make sure that the protagonist is lower than Stroll by having lower agility and should be the third man taking his turn in this setup. Stroll is our second man in this setup because of his high strength in general, wielding the Destroyer archetype, and will be our second main damage dealer in this build. You can use Basilio if you prefer him more than Stroll. The Samurai is the king of slash damage in this setup, but the Destroyer will perform in the strike department. Its basic attack, Powerful Pulverizer, deals heavy strike damage to one enemy. The Stormbreaker Axe provides value by providing lightning damage and dispelling targets as well. The Destroyer is packed with good skills in general, and the Windbreaker deals wind damage and lowers the target's defense for 3 turns. Radiant Crusher deals light damage but ignores resistances, perfect for bosses loaded with a lot of resistance. Health Vessels add 30% additional HP, while Revenge Seeker increases your damage proportion to the wielder's HP loss. Short Range Boost increases the Destroyer's attack by 10% when placed in the front row, which is going to be the case when using this build. Slot in Strike Boost to boost Troll's strike damage by 20%, and Revitalize to gain MP every turn. Fill in his AoE attack needs with Frenzy, and the last slot will be taken by Formation of Vigor, as he is going to be your main attack buffer in this setup. In this setup, you will really use Destroyer Synthesis skills unless you need to hit a specific weakness or you do have extra turns to spare. But don't get me wrong, as all of the available Synthesis skill here hits like an absolute truck. Rampage Slash and Battle Cry Tackle are great skills to use if you want to ignore any kind of resistance. Wanton Destruction deals extreme strike damage but inflict a one-time strike weakness to enemies that you can exploit. If the enemy is resistant to Slash, of course your Samurai can't do that much, so Stroll will crush them for you, being the second main damage dealer in this party. No specific equipment for Stroll, so equip him with any strength or all stat boosting equipment or even agility boosting accessories, since he needs to take his turn first before the protagonist, and you need to prioritize this and more into the actual strategies later on. If this guide is providing value so far, subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and engaging in the comments helps me a lot, and I appreciate your support. Hulkenberg serves the tank and support of the party, wielding the Paladin archetype. She will be using restorative and debuff cleansing skills and even buff the party. The Holy Knight's Proclamation is such a great skill, drawing enemy attention and taking hits for her allies that last for one turn. Useful in mitigating incoming hard-hitting single attacks. I rarely use Protect Guard since Hulkenberg's turn is mostly used on healing, buffing, and cleansing, but the Protect Guard has its niche uses, allowing you to nullify slash, pierce, and strike damage for a single ally. I totally don't use Holy Knight Works, as we do have Dekunda and Medica equipped in this build, while Emergency Aid is phenomenal for healing your allies outside of battles. Although Knight Defense is a great skill, I prefer buffing the entire party in this setup, so I rarely use this skill. The Paladin's passives are really great, having Revitalize to regain MP in every turn, and Counter grants a 15% chance of repelling slash, pierce, and strike damage, perfect for Hulkenberg's build. Slot in Medica, as Hulkenberg will be your dedicated healer in this party. You can use Medica too if you need burst all party heals, but I find Medica to be just right in most cases. Adventurer's Curiosity will be slotted next to boost all the party's members' critical hit rate. Hulkenberg is in charge of buffing the party with Shelter Formation, giving them 2 ranks of defense buff. In the hardest fights in the game, you will be seeing a lot of annoying debuffs from enemies, so slotting in Dekunda is highly suggested. For normal fights, I suggest replacing Dekunda with Mad Rush to have a hard-hitting pierce damage so you can cover all the physical damage types. The Paladin's synthesis abilities are more of a bonus, and I rarely use them because, as mentioned, Hulkenberg will be preoccupied casting her supporting skills. However, they are nice to have just in case you need them in certain cases. Flying Guard Thrust deals extreme physical fierce damage to one enemy and lower their defense for 3 turns. Crusader's Hammer is a great skill, but it should be used in a light damage focus build, so I rarely use it in here. While the same thing applies to Magic Knight's Hammer. Both attacks are useful if you need to hit enemies that are weak to light and lightning, but it rarely happens because your other damage dealers will do it for you. Again, no specific equipment that Hulkenberg should use, just equip her with endurance and magic boosting skills. Equipment that boosts her damage type resistances or status resistance is suggested. However, you need to ensure that Hulkenberg will take his turn last, so don't equip her with agility boosting equipment. Heist Mace's main role is to debuff targets 24/7 and cleanse the party from status ailments, and wields his main archetype, the Ninja, while Hulkenberg cleanses the party from debuff effects. Heist Mace rarely attacks in this setup, but in case you need a strong dark damage, that's where he comes in. Equipping the Ninja will grant the skill Hazy Moon Nightblade. However, I rarely use this skill because this setup barely inflicts enemies with status ailments. Adamant Nightblade is a better skill, just in case you want to deal with dark damage and decrease the target's hit and evasion for 3 turns. I rarely use Agitator's Art in this setup, but if you want to inflict rage, this is the way to go. Stealing, on the other hand, is always a perfect skill to gain good equipment, especially at endgame. I have zero usage of Quick Change Art, so you can disregard this in this setup, and Agility Lowered passive is a fantastic skill for Heismei, granting him a starting boost of hit and evasion at the start of battle. Third Eye is the star of the show, lowering the enemy hit rate by half when they attack Heismei. Your cleanser and debuffer are safe from incoming attacks due to Heismei's innate high agility combined with his awesome passives. It is a must to slot in Dikaja to strip enemy buffs and slot in Penpatra so you can cleanse all of your party members from status ailments. Vidyartha will take the third slot so you can lower enemy attack and defense by 2 ranks, combined with Debilitate, which lowers an enemy's attack, defense, hit, and evasions by 1 rank. You only have 1 synthesis skills in this setup, and it is going to be the God Killer for Heismei. I rarely use this since Heismei is better off debuffing targets. Equip Heismei with endurance or all stat boosting accessories, or even increase his resistance to status ailments since he is the main cleanser of the party. I highly suggest equipping Heismei with Full Moon Medal, which you can get from Coliseum matches as well, to have a revitalize effect on him. He will cast debuffs after debuffs, so you will be draining his MP quickly, so this is suggested. Playing this build is pretty straightforward. During the first turn, Heismei will cast Vidyartha to lower the enemy's attack and defense by 2 ranks. Stroll will cast Formation of Vigor to buff the entire party with 2 stacks of attack buff. From here, the protagonist will have an option to cast Windbreaker, Crimson Moon Art, or Peerless Stone Cleaver depending on the situation. He already has 3 stacks of attack buff, so any skill that he will cast will hit like an absolute freight train. Then if you are fighting a boss, if it's still alive after receiving 39k damage, if the Peerless Stone Cleaver crits, at the start of turn 2, Heismei will then cast Debilitate this time, making enemies suffer 3 stacks of defense and attack debuff. Stroll can either attack with any of his skills, but quick tip, you can replace Frenzy with Adventurer's Curiosity so you can increase the party's critical hit chance aside from Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg can either attack attacks or cast Shelter Formation to increase the party's defense. The One Samurai build is a setup that will decimate endgame challenges with Mighty Broken physical attacks. But if you want to have an effective mid-game party setup or know the best farming spots in the game to make this build work, click these videos and I will catch you on the next one.